Great Wednesday. Welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. I'm your host, King. I'm joined by my co-host, Reggie. Hi, Reggie.
I'm doing well, King. Good to see you as always. We haven't been together consistently over the last couple of months for a variety of reasons, so it's good to be here.
Yeah, yeah. Between personal issues and today some technical challenges has me doing it from a different computer. So hopefully we can get through this show without much interruption. I know my internet connection is not as strong on this computer, but we're gonna do our best. So with that being said, what's your spiritual energy number today?
Today I'm at 10, but I really had to choose it because energetically, um, between the cold and my aging body, I had to really choose that energy this morning because my physical body didn't feel particularly energized, and it usually does. But I'm coming in at a 10 because I don't want to get in trouble with the host.
Well, that's what's so I would say powerful about the spiritual energy number question and knowing that you have to choose it. It's easy to choose it on days when you're feeling, it's nice outside and your body, you got all the reasons to easy choose a 10 because you're feeling great weather, everything else. But it's a challenging days that, for whatever reason, whether it's raining, whether it's cold, whether it's technical issues on your computer, whether your body's not feeling, you choose a 10, then that's where it really tests you and tests your mettle. So like you, I'm having my challenges. So I got the reasons or excuses to choose anything less than a 10 for sure. But I'm gonna choose a 10 because that's what I want to be. And I only see value in being a 10. So I'm a 10 as well. And I'll go right into my gratitude moment, which I'm grateful for my life, my health, the ability to see, hear, walk, talk, stand, breathe, and have a sound mind. That having that gratitude there always going to put me at a 10. And then as well as having the fact that things could be better, but things could be a whole lot worse as far as technical challenges I'm facing today. I don't know if you can hear the ambulance in the background. Mm-hmm. And I also have to deal with my mother. She's struggling, in the new home she's in. Well, it's temporary, but in the rehab facility and how that's going. I'm still grateful that she has sound mind and is still around and have her love energy to be present. Then grateful to be here on this call with you. And like you, I haven't been able to be as consistent. So just grateful to be here with you today and deal with you from that perspective.
Yeah, amen to all that. So yeah, I'm grateful for my standard, but by no means taken for granted gratitude, which I always like to lead with, is indoor plumbing, electricity that allows me to have a refrigerator with fresh food in it, and the ability to replenish that supply of fresh food, fairly easily by getting in a car and driving to a supermarket. And I'm very aware that I think more than half of the people on the planet don't have those two basic things: indoor plumbing and access to refrigerated food, immediate access. So I'm just grateful for that, for general good health. I struggled with a bit of a really bad cold and I lost my voice and couldn't stop coughing for about 5 weeks, which was annoying. But in terms of, on a relative basis, in terms of a lot of other things, it was inconvenient at worst, and annoying. But I'm just grateful for general good health and for the ability to do what we do. As part of our chosen work, we agree to meet once a week and talk about things we think are important. And that's, in one way, that's a really big deal. And in another way, considering some of the events on the planet right now, it's not superficial, but it's not as big a deal. So both of those are true, the absolute and the relative parts of that. So I'm just grateful to be here and ready to jump in a little bit more deeply. I used to be an English teacher, with this conversation about gratitude.
Well, that's an excellent segue into our topics going to be. What are you choosing as a topic for us today?
Yeah, so because we missed a number of podcasts, and last week being the United States Thanksgiving, which has a lot of connotations and a lot of baggage to it nowadays, um, and there's a whole history of the Thanksgiving early on being Abraham Lincoln's giving thanks for the Union Army and fighting against the Confederate rebellion, and then it became a celebration of the Pilgrims and the Native Americans in Massachusetts kind of getting along together and sharing things, which was a fairly significant whitewashing of the larger scope of American history and Europeans in the Americas. But more specifically for our conversation, a general giving thanks for what anybody has, whatever it is that I want to give thanks for, whatever it is you want to give thanks for, at a somewhat larger scale and in more detail, because with the general topics that you and I have been discussing for 2.5 years now, healing America's narratives, where we've taken a look at the histories of women, of Native Americans, of African Americans, the history of the Vietnam War, of post 9/11 war on terror, contemporary politics, and a lot of the suffering involved in all of that, both historically and currently. I think it's important that in the context of the history and the suffering, we never lose the ability or the recognition of the importance of Thanksgiving, giving thanks. That's lowercase Thanksgiving, not the holiday. And it's one of the reasons that you and I always begin the podcast with a moment of gratitude. So, today we just want to take a deeper dive into that, and beyond what we typically say, and you and I kind of have our shtick down, and that's not to minimize what we say because it's sincere from both of us. I know that. But whatever direction we want to go in is to kind of deepen that gratitude in light of who we are, where we are geographically, when we are chronologically, we're in the third decade of the 21st century, and what that means in terms of my most recent writing dealt with the dignities and disasters of modernity this week on my Substack newsletter. So to really look at the gratitude that I have, the gratitude that you'll share personally, and then on a larger scale, in whatever direction we want to go. So that's the basic topic for today. And it's not gratitude in terms of making believe that everything is fine. That's naive. But it's gratitude in not making believe that everything is so hard either. And that's going to be different for every one of the 8 billion people on this planet. So anyway, I could ramble on more, but we're about gratitude today.
Well, I love the context or the conversation, I would say, about gratitude, because I believe that's a space I stay in. And mainly because, like I said, it's things to be grateful for. There's always things to be concerned about: health, family, finances, politics, the uncertainty of all those things. That space, that's a slippery slope, because you can just continue to keep going down and down until you're going to drive yourself crazy, or you're going to force yourself to have to find some kind of artificial stimulant, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's, whatever vice you may have, turn it food, sugar, you know, whatever you need to get those endorphins in your mind vibrating at a different level. And that's what you're going to do if you don't intentionally see gratitude in the little things you do have. And I shouldn't say little, but I would say the most important things you do have. I say little things because in our society, we take for granted health until it's gone.
Mm.
For granted that we can see every morning, we can hear when we get out of bed. We take for granted that our mind is sound and we're thinking clearly. We take for granted those things. Again, until they're gone, become the most dominant thing you're thinking about. Why can't I see? Why can't I hear? You know, what's going on in my mind? And so for me, you know, and we talk about often said, and you start off kind of jokingly because I hadn't heard someone make that reference pretty much in my lifetime was about having running water, you know, and again, taking for granted, you know, because I grew up, you know, we're different in age. So, of course, I grew up in I shouldn't say of course, but I grew up in a time where it was running water. There was never a question of it, you know.
Yeah.
Like kids growing up now, there's always internet. There's not a question of fast dial-up. I mean, fast, turn your computer on and instantly go to a web page, instantly watch YouTube, stream videos, you know. So they grew up in that kind of space where, you know, you're not everywhere prior to the internet. You actually had to go to the library and get information, or when the internet was first introduced, you had to use the dial-up modem and wait for it to make that sound, and it was nowhere near the ability to do video. So, you know, we take for granted things that um, I think that we should be more cognitive of not taking for granted and being appreciative of those things that we need in order to survive on a daily basis. Again, looking at my mom in a you know rehab facility and not being able to really move, lost pretty much functions to a lower half, not being paralyzed, diagnosis that, but actually having those conditions and not knowing what's wrong, and the frustration from her as to why she's getting worse, and there's no diagnosis being told to us what's causing that. Um, Still having a sound mind is definitely a blessing. You know, there's a show on Netflix that, you know, I try to watch movies or series that have at least some kind of relevance to my life. Can't just watch anything that's randomly. But this is one with Ted Danson. It's called A Man on the Inside.
Mm.
He's the premise of the show is he's you know, obviously a you know widower, and his kids want him to do something to be more active, and so he finds an ad in the newspaper to kind of infiltrate a rehability because something was stolen there. So a private detective hires him to go as a man on the inside to be a client of this rehab facility as an elder, but look to try to figure out who's stealing in the rehab facility. So watching that and then dealing with my mother in that situation, it resonates. But his wife died from dementia, and there's a scene that he's talking to this woman in there who has dementia in her mind, and you know, and doesn't remember things, and so that just really makes me more mindful that my mom's situation could be worse. She could be lying in her bed with dementia and not recognizing and remembering who she is, and those things that would really make it a lot worse. So I've been grateful that despite her not to be mobile, but still have sound mind, which I think is more important than anything else, being grateful for that. And then I just really want to bring it back to some other things for, and I think it's a blessing and a curse as well as technology. You know, living in a world now where AI has become much more still on the cutting edge. You know, a lot of people not using it every single day, but the technology has to the point where AI can really be a huge tool to replace assistants. You don't really need a secretary. You don't really need service anymore. You don't really need an editor so much to really help you do your writing. You can use AI for a lot of those things. Now, if you're looking to do something much more on a commercial and sell it, of course, you want to have a human at some point double check what AI is producing. Now, again, I'm not saying have AI write things for you. I'm saying have it check your writing and help you kind of get out of that situation where you may be, as they say, what was that term, brain, or you're writing and you can't remember, you can't get anything on page.
Oh, writer's block.
Writer's block, yes, the term. AI can help, because you can just come up and say, listen, there's my outline. Come up with some thoughts about this outline. They can give you some thoughts, and you know. But what's really powerful about it, what I really admire or appreciate about the tool, is that you can train it. You can literally, go, okay, this is how I want you to think. I want you to think like a 65-year-old man who has this amount of experience. And I want you to have that as your, and I want the tone to be this way. And I want the target market to be that. And that changes the output quite a bit. So for me, I'm fascinated and I'm grateful to the space where I can appreciate that, because it really helps me in my business, and it really helps me work with my clients who obviously don't have the time to learn it to as well as I do. So it's helping me with business, and I'm thankful for that. So despite the challenges and the uncertainty of our country, seeing where we're going to go in the future, I'm definitely grateful to be at a space where even there's still injustice in the world, talk about all the, definitely we're still operating within a white supremacist system that's definitely geared towards white rich men. But the opportunity for you to make your way, if you don't develop a victim mentality or have a victim mentality, you don't focus on lack, you'll persevere through that and then actually really work hard. And what I believe is through connecting with other people who you align with based off principles, people who identify themselves like you and I do as fully human, as opposed to by race, by our gender, by religion, by our economic status. We fully human beings. Then the fact that we can come together and collaborate and create miracles, those chances, those opportunities, that's what I'm grateful for.
Yeah. I love what you said there. And I just wanted to follow up with my own perspective and to put it in a larger context. Because, one of the things you said, we could get caught up in what goes on politically or with this thing going on with the country or that thing, and yet still be, grateful, whether it's for, the upside of AI. There's also some downsides that, with regard to kids misusing it in education and very young kids thinking that it's actually a friend of theirs when it's just a big machine using a lot of electricity that doesn't have any real empathy. So grateful for its functionality, and still a little bit wary of, especially once they get into the artificial general intelligence, which will be, it's not the specifics of word processing or playing chess or some specific task, but it gets more into the, just the general intelligence, which we're still not there with that yet. But I don't want to go into that. I didn't mean to just focus on the AI example. But what I am really grateful for, and this is really, in some ways, it's uncomfortable to say. We have spoken about, your mom. We've spoken about each of our physical bumps and bruises, whether it was, a cough I couldn't get rid of and losing my voice, back pain, different things that happened to us, and even with all of my critique of American healthcare, we do have access to a doctor or a nurse practitioner or some, we can get there. We can get help when we need it. And I put that in the context of imagining dealing with, as you're still dealing with your mom as she's aging and having some health issues. I dealt with both of my parents who are now deceased in that same context, but did it in a place where I wasn't in a war zone. I wasn't starving. I had all of my basic needs met. And most of the people, 90-something% of the healthcare people that I dealt with were empathic, compassionate, good people. There are a couple I would have liked to have broken their noses, but that's another story. And I think, in terms of just the gratitude that I have, and this is the part that's uncomfortable to say, but it's very true. There are thousands. I'm going to start with kids. There are thousands of hungry kids in the United States. Kids, they use the phrase now, food insecurity. They're not starving. There are some starving kids, but a lot of kids don't really have access to regular healthy meals in the United States. There are thousands of kids in Gaza right now. There are thousands of kids in parts of Ukraine right now. And then there are adults in those places as well, who, if they're dealing with an aging parent or a bad cough, or as I have a little bit of lower back pain today, it's a whole different ball game because they're in a war zone. They're cold. They don't have access to heat and running water and just safe sanitation. When they have to use a bathroom, there isn't a bathroom to use. So my gratitude is grounded in when I suffer, I suffer in a relatively safe place where there are, in my case now, more friends than family. I still have a bunch of cousins, but they're all over the country. But good friends who will help me if I need help. And I have a house with a roof, and right now the heat is on. It was, I think, 16 degrees this morning here.
16?
16, yeah.
Wow.
It's been in the teens every night for the last 3 or 4 nights. It's going to be single digits on Friday morning. And
So
Friday
it's definitely glove weather where you are. You have to wear gloves when you're outside.
Yeah, it's glove weather for sure. Hat, and for me, it's hat weather too. Like for you, it's hat weather indoors. Come on, and so, but just so my gratitude is both absolute. I'm relatively healthy. My brain works. I had a reasonably good family growing up. I was loved by both my parents, neither of whom was perfect. My mom was angry at me a lot. My dad was a hardworking guy, but generally I'm just grateful for that. And I'm also grateful in the relative sense because of when I mentioned the when and the where. I grew up in the middle 20th century in the United States. Now it's the first third of the 21st century. As a second generation Italian American, I was relatively okay. And so there was not a war where I lived. I was eligible for Vietnam, but my number came up really high in the lottery. And by that point, the guys who were coming back said, "Don't go." But I didn't have to make that choice. I was grateful. I'm fortunate that way. So just generally speaking, in terms of chronology, geography, and general health, I've been gifted. I've received mostly good things in my life, and I'm really grateful for that. And as I get older and I pay increasingly more attention to an expanded group of human beings, so not just Catholic Italian Americans in the New York City area, which was how I grew up, and then not just all my cousins who are all over the country now, and not just my colleagues at work, but to have a real relationship with all human beings. I like to say that if you can't feel the suffering, and just to use the current examples now of the folks in Western North Carolina who got surprised by the hurricane with all the floods, and other parts of the country as well, here in the States. So the horrors of these Palestinians in Gaza, the horrors of a smaller number of Israelis on October 7th, 2023, which began that mess. Well, was the most recent iteration of the mess. I'm just so deeply grateful that that type of immediate threat hasn't affected me personally. And there's just luck and good fortune there. The folks in Gaza and Ukraine didn't do anything to deserve that, what they're facing. Yeah, so I'm speaking specifically about the day-to-day people. The leaders, we could have another conversation. But just the good fortune of geography and chronology to be where I was when I was, or where I am when I am, is a big deal. And I'm both grateful for it. And it's almost as though, we've heard of survivor's guilt, where if you were in a war zone and, you survived a horrible attack but people close to you died, you wonder why you survived. That's, you have that, what they call survivor's guilt. Nowadays, I really believe if we're paying attention, if you're relatively healthy and relatively safe on this planet in 2024, and you're paying attention, a little bit of survivor's guilt probably is appropriate, no matter where you live, because of how people are suffering all over this planet, and for various reasons in various ways. So I'm just grateful as of right this moment, because I don't know what the next moment is going to bring, for that relative good fortune of, as I've been saying, chronology and geography, and other things too, because you and I have discussed, the difference between, I'm a few years older than you, but the difference between me growing up as a white man in the greater New York City area, where, everybody's there. I mean, like you take the subway, like everybody's on the subway. So if, the entire planet is represented on the New York City subway system, if you take it. So black, white, brown, how many languages, how many religions, it's all there. So it's, in many ways, it was just a safe place to be a human being, because you weren't saying, oh, there's a dangerous person, because everybody was there. And your experience growing up as a Black man. So we have, we don't share that particular sense of safety. But in other ways, we do share a relatively safe and fortunate time of being in the world. So I'm just grateful for all of that, but in the context of other people's great misfortune, I think. So I think I kind of rambled there a little bit, but that's what I do. Yeah.
Well, I think this is a wonderful topic, mainly because I think it's to talk about, particularly right now, what we're grateful for. A lot of people will say it's hard to be grateful in this moment in time, like the war in Gaza right now, the war in Ukraine right now, what's going on in Africa right now, what's going on in Haiti right now. All these other things. If you let your mind focus on, as Stephen R. Covey talks about, your circle, the difference between your circle of concern, your circle of influence.
Yeah.
So those things are my circle of concern, obviously, but I can't have any influence over what's happening in Haiti, Gaza, Africa, Sudan, any of those places. So if I let myself live in my circle, and if I let my mind operate and focus on my concern, I won't get anything done that I can influence.
Right.
And that's where I would think the power of feeding your mind with food. What books are you reading? What news are you consuming? Where is the source coming from? What's the, nowadays you gotta be very cognitive when you're watching videos, whether it's on YouTube or you watch you streaming national media news. You really can't trust those sources. It used to be we can trust media to a certain extent. Back when I was a child, you can trust media a little bit more than you can now. wasn't so much all about sensationalized headlines. I mean, that was always a part, but now that's all. That's what it's about with no morality around it. I can come out and say, you know, if I just want to get a YouTube headline, I'm a victim of racism, and that's going to be a hot button for folks. It's going to resonate with me to say, yeah, I feel it too. Here's why I'm sharing. It's going to be folks that sit and say, well, what you got to be feeling about racism for country. This country is great, and you should be thankful to be in this country. But either way, I'm gonna get engaged on my video, and I know that, and that's gonna give me views and clicks and the opportunity to generate revenue from it. But the morality aspect of it says no, that's not what I believe. Against my, that's against integrity for my context, against my integrity and my principles. I'm not going to look just for any way to make money. And also learn that, if we dwell in the places of things we can't change, or more, if we focus on things that are bad in our lives, then it leaves very little room for you to do things that are good. Like you can't count in a smile on your face at the same time. You got to choose which one you're gonna, walk around with. And again, in me, as I've gotten older, I see no value. Like throughout history, in your book, you definitely lay out a lot of atrocities throughout history as far as what this society has done to, whether it's women, men, blacks, what happened in Vietnam, what happened to Native Americans, at the same time, we can look at it and say that all white people are not perfect, and that's a great thing. And it never have been. There's been some great white people throughout history that have done some things and risked their lives. Like a hero that doesn't really get enough recognition in our history books, but I definitely want to lift up his flowers as much as I can. Is John Brown. And John Brown from the Harper's Ferry situation, which is not very far from where I live in Maryland. And I remember reading about John Brown and the way it was talked, crazy. It would show images of his hair all wild, and John Brown was crazy. That's how it was taught to you. Like he was insane. But then you really quickly you realize he wasn't insane. He was someone who truly believed his religious dogma, that if this is what God wanted, this is what man, then I'm going to put my life, not only my life, but my son's lives and my legacy from that point forward at jeopardy. So thankful to someone like him for standing on those merits and being true to that. A lot of Quakers and folks who were the original abolitionists, and willing to die for that, So folks who were on the Underground Railroad who fought and helped that go. So, civil rights movement. So throughout history, even though there's been some atrocities, there's always been some love. There's always been some compassion. There's always been some understanding. And, when you choose to, and I choose to only focus on the evil parts of a society and stay in that space, and then point the finger and choose to be the victim. But again, the engineer in me, I always break things down to what is the value that I'm getting from that. I can stay in this mad and say, well, this is what white people did, and generalize and group all white people in one area and say this is what they did, and this is how they've overcome, and this they've been able to capture and abuse and oppress people. Or you can look at the folks who fought against that, and the ones who were heroes during that time frame, and really put my energy and my mindset learning about them and figuring out what drove them to the heroic act when they didn't have to. They could just say, oh, it doesn't affect me, so I'm just going to stay in my space over here. And yeah, that's those people going through that, but not my problem. They could have had that where they stood up and said, no, I'm going to fight for justice because I know it's wrong, and I live with myself because the God in me, which I believe that everybody has that in them, if they're willing to turn that into and hear that and operate on, can actually see compassion and love and kindness. And I think what gets dulled down is that frequency gets tuned away more we feed our minds the wrong things, feed our minds the wrong media. Just make my point on that real quick. I was again on YouTube, and and I have to get more control over this because YouTube will, as you know, the algorithm is giving you the videos that they think you would like based on videos you watched before. And what came across my feed was a little thumbnail about this actress, Nigerian British actress named Cynthia Evo. And I was talking, the commenter or the poster of the video was talking about how it was done by a Black woman, how Cynthia Evo had made these comments about Black people, Americans, right around the time she did Harriet Tubman. And she was upset about a lot of these British or other immigrant actors who are of people of color getting roles that should be going to Black folks. And they're upset about that. And she's going on all the she feels justification to be upset. And it's like, I just looked at it and said myself, see, if I let myself get into that space, what is the I get for that? As opposed to just recognizing Cynthia Evo is a great talent. She can sing, she can act, she does a lot of great things. I'm happy that she played Harriet Tubman. She did a great job with it. She played Aretha Franklin on a Amazon Genius series they put together. I think she did a great job with that. And so where I'm going with this is that I think it's more imperative now more than ever to really make a decision as far as, are you going to wear that smile or are you going to wear that frown? And then asking yourself, what's the benefit of each?
Yeah. I mean, just purely from a physiological standpoint, we actually know that this, as opposed to, I don't know how to do, I don't frown that much, or the frown. It's it works in various ways. There are things that happen to us that, quote, make us smile or make us frown, but if we choose to smile or choose to frown, it actually impacts the body as well. So it's it doesn't. I don't want to state the research too closely because I'm not that familiar with it. So it's not like you can change everything by deciding to force a smile. I'm not saying that, but the difference physiologically of having a neutral or a somewhat smiley face as opposed to a somber or dour or frowning face really does make a difference. So I love that you shared that. And and beyond just I know you weren't just talking about the appearance piece, but just you have a smiling attitude or a frowning attitude. And the example of the actress is a good one. It's yeah. What do I want to zero in on here? What somebody had to say, an opinion expressed, or what we've seen her do, which is really beautiful and a gift. Yeah, it's just the complexity of. So we're talking about gratitude here, and I'm going down another rabbit hole. But I want to say this piece. I'm aware of the benefits of the internet, World Wide Web, social media, all of it. I get it, right? You and I wouldn't be talking right now without it, with the technology. But one of the downsides among many, and it's true for young kids, teenagers, old people like me, is that it allows me to narrow my world to a screen and a feed, which, as you understand it more deeply than I do, which is algorithmically designed not to help me grow as a human being, right? But to give me more of what I seem to like, and or depending on the particular social media, the medium, give me more of what it's basically based on engagement as opposed to liking. So if I engage a lot with things I hate and I argue, it'll give me more of that as well. And what that ends up doing it's reducing my world. And I have one of these, but I use it as a phone when I call somebody, and I do text once in a while. But in terms of social media, I use my computer for it. I don't have Facebook or Instagram or any of those things on my phone. I don't want them there. But for many people across the age spectrum, this is their world. The screen is their world. Everything comes through this. And it's even bad for your posture because most people go like, they're down here. So I'm gonna get great gratitude out of this downward spiral here in just a second. I'm grateful for the freedom to choose how I engage with media in general and social media in particular. I do use it, but I have it as a tool. It doesn't have me as a tool. I mean, I'm sure it does at some level because they learn things about me, but it's a choice, and everybody. I don't say everybody too often. I'm trying to think if I'm overstating this. I'm going to stay with everybody. Everybody has that choice. I can't think of anyone who doesn't have the choice of determining how they want to use social media and their phone or their computer or their tablet or whatever. But it's addictive. And I'm grateful for having that choice.
Well, it's funny that you talk about how, the algorithm, some more which you seem to like or which you put your intention on, right? And that same thing could be said about the law of attraction, that universal law, the kind of in that movie, the law of attraction. You can track things that you want, which I always believe was, kind of misleading, like a marketing way. I think it was so less that they put the truth, which is you attract who you are. So you got to first be a good person to attract good people in your life. So algorithm. If you want to watch good YouTube recommendations, then you watch videos that educate you. And the more you watch like those and save those, you're going to get more of those videos recommended to you than the garbage. So I realized I even watched myself. I fall into the same rabbit hole. When the Ravens are winning, I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. I get nothing. I watch those videos. I want to hear those talk shows, and I all those. They give me unlimited Ravens stuff from the lowest person who just started the video talking about the Ravens to the most watched Ravens show on the internet. But then I can go a week away from that and get into work mode and learning mode, and I'm watching stuff from, the gentleman who wrote, the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene. And I'm watching his stuff, and I'm watching other Arthur stuff, Stephen R. Covey stuff, and I'm watching, when I watch those videos and like those videos, and I get nothing but that as recommendations. 80% of my recommendations are around things, and that's so. To your point, it's about controlling and choosing which one I rather focus my attention on and watch. And see, to me, that goes back to, and I'm going to talk a little bit about being a little religious here. You go back to Genesis and you read 1:26. We created in God's image. And I always talk about how you interpret that scripture to mean what God's image means. I think a lot of people interpret that scripture to mean God's image as in physical form. That, God is a human being or looks like a human being, and all the depictions we see, whether it's on a sea apple or we see throughout different religious texture, and that, God was white and debate whether he's white or black and all those physical features, where I took it more now to mean more of a spiritual meaning, that just like the creator can create, we're small co-creators on a small level, we can as well. And that's how I interpret it. So I interpret it as a creator So that means that what I put my energy, put my mind on, I can produce, as opposed to trying to look like God, rather behave like God, is how I would have put it in that context. And for me, that's how important when I put my perspective on anything that I watch, anything that I consume. It's I've taken that information. What do I do with it? How is it beneficial to me? How is it beneficial to my soul? Does it make me feel more fulfilled as a result of bringing information in or not? Or even in entertaining arguments. I hear people arguing politically. I hear people arguing. It's like, and I've said this before in our last show, politics have gotten to the point of trying, if you are, and people who are these fans of these teams will get this. If you're a Ravens fan and you're a Steelers fan, they're in the same division, the AFC North, we're rivals. We don't like each other, right? And it's literally like talking to, and I'm a Ravens fan talking to Steelers, trying to convince that Steelers fan why the Ravens is the better team and why they should like my team and why they should root for my team. That's where we are politically now. It's like, I'm going to give you all these facts and all my opinions of why the Democrats are better than Republicans. And the Republican person I'm talking to is going to give me all the reasons why the Republicans are better than Democrats. And to me, you realize that those conversations now become exercise in futility. It's like there's so much more I could be doing with my energy and my time to win over this person, whether it's politically, whether it's sports, or whether it's anything that doesn't bring me joy and keep me in a space of gratitude. If it takes me out of it and changes my vibrational frequency around love, I don't want to do. And so that's kind of where I receive, like I said, whether it's somebody Black who's trying to tell me, here's all the reasons why Black people are upset with America right now, what we're not getting and what we're left out of, and what other races or other ethnic groups are getting more than us, which to me is exercise in futility. Because at the end of the day, any person that's born, to your point, is born here in America, that has the opportunity, has access to the internet, yeah, you may have challenges if you're not a white, rich man. It's going to be more difficult, obviously, but it's not impossible. And if you focus on what's possible and what can you do, what can you learn? I mean, I was talking to my niece, and she was saying how she wanted to get into IT, and she doesn't have that in her background because she graduated from high school, and she wants to get a job in that space because she's tired of being a bartender. I'm like, well, you can go to Google and take a free course on cybersecurity on Google and get a certification. And she tried to give me her justification why I don't have. She tried to tell me why she didn't have time. And I told her, and it's something I always believe. And this quote was said in a sitcom I was watching, to reiterate the same energy I'm on. You can't be broke and don't have time. That's the worst place to be. If you're broke, you better have a lot of time. You can get unbroke, but if you broke and don't have any time, you're doing something horrible with your time, which is the reason why you're broke. So I say all that to say is chose this topic because even though we kind of ramble a little bit, at the end of the day, I think the main point we want folks to walk away with is election. A lot of us are obviously tense on both sides, and then the cabinet picks he's picking, it's like, wow, it makes it even worse. If you actually allow yourself to get caught up in that, I look at it more as, well, he has what he wanted right now. They put him in power. Let's see what they're going to do. Now you can't sit here and say how bad America is no more. Can't say America is bad. We at this place in time. You have the ability now to make a change. You have the ability to change things. So while he's doing what he's doing on my micro level, I'm going to focus on what I can do in my world to make people around me better, to create and vibrate at the frequency of love, and continue to build tribes of fully humans, and that's my focus. And only work with people who are in that, who vibrate on that frequency. Because what I realized when I meet someone like who I've only met you once in person, but you and I consistently, for the most part, we ran some challenges, but we have more days on over the years of doing this podcast than we have had off. and I commit to each other to be here, to be present, to show up. Where, like I said, folks my entire life, and they're less committed to keeping their word to me than you have been. It says a lot. And that to me is what keeps me hopeful and keeps me in a feeling of gratitude and grace about the direction of the world than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I just agree. I know we're close to ending. I just want to make a couple of comments. I agree with everything you just said. The idea of being made in God's image, because I grew up with that, as a Catholic kid in a Catholic school, elementary school. And, and I just basically believed it. So, God looks like a human being. But one of the best things I heard probably in high school when somebody said, that's, we created God in our image. We think God has eyes and a nose and all that because that's what we read that passage and we think that's what it means. And the guy said, I don't know if it was a teacher or who it was, but he basically said, look, if human beings looked different than we actually do. So imagine human beings were exactly the same as we are today, but we look like giraffes. So we had big, long necks and these big heads, but that's what a human being was. And we still had religion. We would think God looked like a giraffe. he said, because we did in that regard, we made God, the image of the Christian God, the old man with the beard. We created that. Because because of that literal word image, which is a visual word usually. But I agree with you. I mean, it's not so much the appearance as the essence is what we're talking about. There were a few other things I wanted to say, but I think I'll just stop it there because I know we need to begin to bring this home.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, that's a segue to talk about what do you see as some next steps that folks can this gratitude and grace more in their daily lives, particularly now?
Yeah, notice, again, I'm not an expert at this, but I do practice. Notice what upsets you. I have to notice what upsets me. And the measure of someone's full humanity, I believe, is the scope and scale required to upset me. So, if the thing that really drives me crazy is that, I burn the toast, or to use the analogy growing up, don't cry over spilt milk, or I spill something or I drop something. In the larger scope of existence, that's a kind of small worldview. So look at the things that upset you. And if you're really upset because the price of you're living in this beautiful, I'll say 4,000 square foot house, which I don't live in, and you're upset because the price of gas is going up, which is right now it's actually pretty good compared to how it's been. But you don't care about the kids in Gaza. Then I think you have to just take some time and reassess what gratitude is for you. Because your life has been so good that you're in this 4,000 foot house. I just picked 4. Some people, you could be a 1,500 foot house, or it could be a 10,000, whatever. And if you're upset because, the flushing handle on the toilet is misbehaving, and you either have to open up the tank, get in there and fix it, or call the plumber, that should be your greatest issue. So what are you really grateful for? Think of the basic things you have that you're grateful for that half the people on the planet don't have. And really practice that gratitude. Oh, the toilet won't flush this morning. But look at the house I'm in where the toilet won't flush. And there's the phone number for the plumber. Or there's my toolbox, and there's my wrench, and there's my screwdriver, whatever. So it's just it's a matter of perspective seeking and taking. What are you grateful for? What do you take for granted? And what does it take to upset you? Practice those 3 things. See where you land.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, as we get ready to bring our show to a close, we move into the segment of now we want to have a person or a highlight, give them a flower, so to speak. Someone who, past or present, who we believe has exhibited these fully human characteristics that we have put in ourselves and pattern our lives and on that journey to become. And I'll go first and say my example. I kind of said his name earlier. I may have said his name probably a couple of years. I'm sure I said his name in the previous show. If I didn't, I'd be surprised. It's John Brown. To me, when you willing to put your life on the line for justice, not for your own personal agenda and your own personal safety, say, I'm going to fight for the rights of others, particularly those others who don't look like you for whatever reason they may be. A man doing it for a woman doing it for a man, for Catholics doing it for Protestants, whatever the case may be. But you stand up for justice, even at the peril of death, even at the putting your family in jeopardy. That to me shows me more fully human than anybody I can think of when it comes to that. And to do it at a time where there was no other examples. There was no one else you can look at and say, well, here's an example other than what he Jesus' life to be. That was his example. And say, I'm going to behave like that. I'm not going to just read the scripture and quote it. I'm going to live it. That's what being fully human is being that little crow creator to say, I can create the world I intend to live, or I can make it different. Because of that, his name is forever in our history books, even though our history tries, our normal American history tries to taint him as crazy. He's still in there. And if you read between the lines of what he did, you realize he's not crazy. He was a human being who stood for values and who lived by his principles. And I want to lift him up and give him his flowers as a result of that before Black History Month.
Yeah, beautiful. So this is somebody I'm pretty sure I haven't spoken about before, and he just recently, this past Saturday, December 1st, passed away at the age of 99. And in his niche, however you say that word, he was a big deal. So Lou Carnesecca, who was the basketball coach at St. John's University in the 70s, he took a couple of years off and coached the New Jersey Nets. Then he went back to St. John's in 73 and then took them to the Final Four in the 80s and retired. I forget what year he retired. But, he had over 526 wins, I think. And he was this little guy, and he was intense, and he would scream a lot. And they used to joke he worked hard on the players. He'd run up and down the sidelines. But even the guy, the other coaches, many of whom were a lot younger than he, who spoke about him after he died on Saturday, the basic message with him, he'd go crazy with the referees and things, which is part of the deal if you coach Division I. But the basic message was he never said a bad word about anyone. People loved him. I mean, the first I met, I didn't know him well, but the first time I met him, because I went to St. John's, and I was in Alumni Hall, which is the arena, and the basketball coach's office was across from the first men's room as you walk into the arena. And I was a freshman, and I walk in there, and as I'm doing my business at the urinal, like Louis, as people call him, walked in. And so I was like shocked. I said, wow, I figured they had their own private bathroom. So I said, hey, coach. I said hello to him as we're both peeing. And he just spoke to me. Like he just said, yeah, how you doing, buddy? And then because I had my high school basketball coach, Jerry Houston, had played for St. John's when Coach Carnesecca was an assistant to Joe Lapchick, there was a connection there. So I had a few more conversations with him subsequently. But just a guy that was loved by many, who never said a bad word about anybody, and who made it to 99. And he was still publicly speaking on behalf of St. John's when he was 97 and 98. I think the last year has probably been tough on him. But Lou Carnesecca, I think he was doing the work he was supposed to be doing. He had a really good run, and he would turn 100, I think, in January, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, again, thank you, Reggie. As usual, I learned so much of co-hosting with you, and it's been a pleasure. Like I said, it definitely helps. Even though it's in the middle of the week, definitely something I can look forward to on a Monday, and the energy from it for the rest of the week. So definitely look forward to that. So I want to thank you for that and being present and bringing 10 to every show, not issues and your challenges and your complaints, and being present with that. So thank you for that. And I want to thank our listening audience who listen to us or may catch this on the replay, the recording. Thank you for listening to our show. You listen to it all the way through. Again, the purpose of our show is to, in this divisive world that we live in, is so polarized politically, racially, ethnically, that at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and that's all identified with being more fully human. And I hope you get that from our show and continue to look for ways to be on that path and join us in that. So until next Wednesday at 10 a.m., let's all continue to look for ways to be more fully human. And let's practice that gratitude that we talked about today's show. Thank you. Until next Wednesday, take care.